injured as a result of other people's negligence for over 50 years here in South Florida. If you get injured as a result of somebody else's negligence, it can be a car accident, it can be a slip and fall, medical malpractice, negligent security. If somebody else's negligence caused an injury to either you or one of your loved ones, give us a call. Our phone number is on our page, our website is on our page, and our email addresses are on our page. Please give us a call for a free consultation. We'd love to help you. Let Zach and I protect your rights.
I feel like 2024 is going to be magical.
Fish on First Live, new series for the Marlins. It brings a new episode with us, our panel conversation all throughout the entire season, getting you caught up on what's happening around the Marlins with the Marlins opponents, checking you in from the ballpark itself, bringing you our expert commentary, and of course, incorporating all of your comments in the live chat as we're simulcast on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube as well. What's up, Damar, TP Joseph, as always, presented by Berger and Hicks, as we have been throughout this entire season, for your personal injury defense, for all your needs. They are great for that. Eli Sussman, Kevin Burrell, Isaac McPherson, Isaac Azut, all checking in with me as we are looking ahead to the Marlins versus the Brewers series, continuing this homestand. And as usual, we check in on the previous series. Marlins won their second consecutive series. By most measures, this past week was the best week on the field for this otherwise struggling, to say the least, Marlins team. They took 2 out of 3 from the Mets at home. Of these 3 games, I think the one that we want to spend the most time on is maybe the middle game right there on Saturday, where a crazy comeback, as Kevin noted, was reminiscent of what we saw from the team all of last year, trailing by as many as 5 runs late in that game. And then at the very end, against a brand name closer in Edwin Diaz, coming all the way back and forcing extra innings, winning it in walk-off fashion right there. Yeah, so Kevin, that is a sight that we just haven't seen very much this year, for them to fall behind early and still be able to summon enough offense at the very last moment in order to pull out a win.
Yeah, couldn't have been more 2023 Marlins for you there on Saturday, as they took the second series, their back-to-back series. They took back-to-back series there with that game to win. And then they were going for the sweep, but yeah, couldn't have asked for it any better. It kind of looked like the guys that had really struggled to begin the season now really turned it around in May. Josh Bell with the home run, bringing in Otto Lopez in that month of May. He's been hitting over, I think, 300 or way over 300. Nick Gordon with a couple hits. Jazz had the home run, the RBI. So couldn't have asked for a better game from the Marlins. And then it was highlighted really by that extra inning walk-off with Otto Lopez. You had Tanner Scott really come in, close it down in that, I believe, top of the 10th. Couldn't have been a better one for the Marlins, much needed. And, puts them in a good position entering, what was supposed to be hopefully the series sweep. But, Skip definitely, I think, spoke his mind in that Sunday game. But I'll let Isaac talk more about that since he was there.
Well, yeah, I guess a lot of attention was put on that Sunday afternoon game where the Marlins had an opportunity to complete their second sweep of the season. And yeah, that first inning, Kevin, like you mentioned, 6 velocity right away. His first pitch was a 87-mile-an-hour changeup that hit Francisco Lindor. It was nowhere near. And then the ensuing pitch was a ball in the dirt that ended up being a wild pitch. So it was right away, you noticed something was off. And then he was unable to finish that inning cleanly. Obviously, a 40-pitch first inning, 4 earned runs allowed. I was surprised that he even went out for the second inning. But obviously, like Skip said post game, they had to use a lot of guys on Saturday, so they really needed us to milk out as much from Sixto as they could have. And yeah, like Skip's comments were pretty stern, as you guys saw on X yesterday. He's very unhappy, and this is the time to get his SHIT together because Miami needs to not be behind by 4 runs every time the Sixer takes the mound in the first inning. So hopefully that'll sink in his mind for next time.
Yeah, and I think Eli mentioned it on the Spaces yesterday. Both games the Marlins lost this past week were 6-0 starts. So, there's the Detroit one. There's not much you could do there. It was the Spencer Torkelson homer there, but then this one, I mean, yesterday was pretty much unexcusable. You don't need that from a pitcher to 80 miles per hour. You would think he was hurt. And I'm pretty sure you had mentioned it on Twitter. I think Bethencourt was looking over at the dugout, making sure this guy was fine, and maybe he does need an opener. I think that's something Skip mentioned, and there's guys that could do it. We've seen Maldonado, who was sent down. We'll have to wait now over a week for that to about 2 weeks from the return, but that could have been a guy who could be an opener for the Marlins. He did it in his first career appearance as a big leaguer. He started that game, so that's definitely an option. We also have guys in AAA that have done it. Rodri Munoz. I mean, there's multiple options that they could go with to start games that are not 6-0.
It is, yeah. It's just hard to wrap your mind around it. So, as you noted, he threw several pitches that were 87-mile-per-hour fastballs in the first inning. For a guy that his average velo is 94, you don't just see guys intentionally do that. Like, it's just not an effective strategy to throw that much below your max effort, even if you are pacing yourself. And the combination of that and also the poor command too, like that is what's troubling. Is there are some guys that can have success at below average velo, but you need to command your stuff well. And this outing, especially the Rockies one, that is still seared into my brain, how he was pummeled by everybody up and down the Rockies lineup the first time through, just because he was throwing everything right down the middle. That has been kind of my concern, even when Sixto made the team out of opening day, and there was it was such a feel-good story, a great comeback story. There was still just serious questions about how he's going to miss bats if the combination of the velo is down, the command isn't what it was, and even the secondary pitches aren't moving the way that they used to. So he's not missing bats and he's not getting chases with those. Overall, Sixto, his whiff rate is half of what it was when we saw him before his injuries, all the way cut in half for a guy that, if you can even remember all those many years ago, even then he wasn't like super overpowering at the time. He's still somebody that needed to pitch the contact somewhat, where his fastball shape was never the one that would really allow him to blow up by guys. But for him to drop off that much is something that has, even if he's throwing at his max effort, he relies so much on his defense. And it just gives him such little margin for error to actually be successful pitcher at the big league level in any role. But what is your best guess in terms of how this plays out when his rotation spot comes up again, Isaac? Do you think he gets another normal start, or are they immediately going to have to try something different with an opener? Or are they going to maybe even push him back into the bullpen by the time we get to next weekend?
Well, that's the hope. Like you guys mentioned in the Spaces yesterday, Edward Cabrera should be back soon. And like Kevin mentioned, there are a few guys that could, if need be, step in here. The point is that they don't want to take Sixto off the active roster. So I think he probably will make that next start, or he will pitch the bulk of the innings per se. I think, like Skip said, he told us yesterday, they've tried everything. Less pitches in the bullpen prior to a start, more pitches, less time in the weight room, more time in the weight room, everything. They've tried everything, minus the opener so far. So if I had a guess, I would say that enough is enough. This guy has not shown the ability to go deep or to start effectively. So I would say, yeah, maybe I don't know if they want to use him because he's been arguably their best right-handed option. Maybe use Calvin Fauché to start the game. Use maybe Nardi, like just someone to start the game for him, an opener, and then have Sixto pitch the bulk of the innings, quote unquote, that haven't been giving him trouble, like the innings 2 through 4. But I don't know, that maybe the second inning will be bad. So who knows? But I would be a little bit surprised if we just see Sixto make a regular traditional start his next time out, which would be in Arizona, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and I'll give you the Alex Carver answer here, which I'm not totally opposed to. Just cut him. Cut your ties. You've tried everything you could. You put him in the bullpen. You made him a starter. You stretched him out. The guy, obviously, and I'm not, not one to confirm it or deny it, but definitely there were some work ethics with him as he was returning from his injury. I don't know if that's translated onto this season as much. Definitely looks like he's made the strides to return. He definitely wants to. He wants to be here. think everyone does, but enough is enough, man. I mean, this when you have Skip, who Isaac, you and I and Eli could say this confidently, that he defends his players more than anyone. And the fact that he went out there and he said what he said definitely shows how he's feeling about this. And honestly, there are guys who deserve this opportunity more than him right now. And I'll keep it like that. I'll keep it just like that. And cut him. Just cut your ties. And he's going to go through waivers. I don't think a team will take him. I would be very surprised if a team takes him. But yeah, I mean, you have multiple options in AAA who could help you out right now, and in guys that are on and not on the 40-man roster.
And this gives you a picture of who is on the 40-man as of this moment, where steadily getting a little bit healthier, especially on the pitching side than they had been before. With was mentioned, TP was wondering about Hoeing. Hoeing is, we'll get to in the injury update shortly. He's going to start a rehab assignment with Jacksonville, not as a starter, though, as a reliever, going 1 or 2 innings tomorrow. If that goes well, you figure might only be 1 or 2 additional rehab starts after that, rehab appearances after that, and he could be back on this active roster a week from now. So he is in the right direction. And JT Chagua in the same sort of trajectory as well. But of course, he is a relief-only guy. He has already had setbacks, and him trying to come back from the IL in that aspect, just get everybody on the same page. The rotation now is Garrett, Luzardo, Rogers, Weathers, and Sixto. And down in AAA, you have Max Meyer, who is coming off one of his better AAA outings since he's been sent down. You have Rodri Munoz, who also pitched really well in his last outing in Jacksonville and did good 2 out of 3 times in the big league level, except when he ran into the Dodgers back then. So they do have other alternatives, even outside the 40-man, as you alluded to. There's Patrick Monteverde. Best performer of the non-40-man guys has been Yoni Chirinos. He's actually been, I don't know what that looks like at the big league level. I think I do know what that looks like, and it might not be very effective, but it is kind of in the same mold as Sixto, where it's a guy that has at least good control, and he should be able to give you innings. It's just a question of whether they're quality innings one way or the other. And in terms of taking the extreme step of DFAing him, like he's in a situation where if he clears waivers, you can actually keep him in the organization, outright him to AAA. It doesn't mean that has to be the end of the road. Like if you're still holding out hope that he gets things straightened out and he adjusts to this new reality, there's still a long season ahead of us for him to potentially come up again, show something later in the year in order for them to reselect him to the 40-man later on. So that's ultimately something that I was harping on during spring training as well, that DFAing him is not the end of the world, but I think we've now seen the way that he's performed and the deficiency he still has. The first inning thing aside, just the general lack of swing and miss, that I think he's a guy that you'd be able to sneak through waivers and still keep around for later on.
And I think there's a world where you could keep him on this roster, as a reliever. He gives you 1 inning of work, 2 innings of work. It's obviously not the first inning where he is dotting 80-mile-per-hour fastballs. Maybe it'll be the same if he comes out of the bullpen, but there's different ways you could go about it. But I think definitely DFAing him has to be one of the higher options at the moment, just given how things have gone. And it's no knock on the guy. He made the comeback. Props to him. But, I mean, they're just have him work it out in AAA, see how it goes, because honestly, there are guys down there that deserve it right now. And Eli mentioned 3 great options, in my opinion, over Sixto right now.
Great, but yeah, I agree.
I mean,
I don't
2
think
out of the 3.
if they DFA 6, I don't know. I think someone, just the name alone, I think would get him to be picked up by some rebuilding team, and I wouldn't care. That's why I would still do it. I'd still DFA him. Like he's not a young kid anymore. That things are not the same. They're not going to be the same. You see the sort of the same work ethic that's been reported for a while. Like, yeah, DFA him. Another team, I would say it's probably a 50-50 shot. Another team would claim him on waivers, but yeah, if that's the case, then so be it. Just give, there are a lot of options here, and they're not even on the 40-man. They could be off the 40-man. That you just might as well see what you got here, because this guy, I just don't see the point in holding.
Yeah, and worst comes to worst, a team claims him. I guess if a team jumps up, you get cash considerations in return for Sixto. So
Yeah,
you would get something in return there, and I guess that's
swallow your pride, cut your losses, and at this point, sort of maybe move on here.
Kevin is finishing up an article about how this Marlins offense has flipped the switch to respectability in the month of May. That after having, one of the worst months the franchise ever had to start things off, that it's been kind of a group effort with these guys turning it on. So right before we put that article out, Kevin, just could you point out some of the guys that have really impressed you in terms of getting their season on track in May?
Josh Bell's by far the one that's impressed me the most, and I think it's expected of him to kind of not put up those exact numbers you're seeing on the screen, but put up numbers from what we saw when he got here to Miami. I mean, this guy was not putting the ball in play whatsoever. His BABIP was under 200. The other one that you see right under him, Christian Betancourt, his BABIP was like point something. Definitely went up. I know it's less plate appearances than what you get from a Nick Fortes, but still, I mean, hitting over 300, on base over 333. I mean, it's exactly what you want from this Marlins offense. And then I guess the injection of Otto Lopez into this offense has helped out a little bit too, with his 946 OPS. You got to love what you're seeing from the bats. Nick Gordon, I asked Skip about Nick Gordon, what he's seen from 1 month to the other, and it's really not trying to pull the ball as much, not trying to pull it for power, more using the gaps, using the whole field, getting those doubles, and putting the ball in play. And we saw it on, I believe it was Saturday. He had that RBI double. He had another single. Then Jazz specifically is an interesting case because the month of May has been a good one. But if you look at Jazz's numbers since the day of the Arias trade, which when I look back, I did it that first game against Oakland, which he didn't lead off by any means. He didn't lead off, but still, when you look at that first game until yesterday's game against the Mets, he's hitting over 300 and he's putting up really nice numbers. Now, the question becomes the defense. Where do you want to put him? Do you want to keep him in center? At the moment, yeah, probably. But yeah, it's definitely been a very nice month for the Marlins. Couldn't have asked for any better, honestly. 8-9 record. Hopefully 9-9 by the end of today, and hopefully 11-9 by the end of this series. But Marlins have a good chance to keep it rolling here against a Milwaukee team, which is definitely interesting.
The last thing I want to touch on before we do our press box report and go into our break is the guy that's on the bottom of those May splits. The only guy that seemingly got worse from April into May, unfortunately, was Tim Anderson. He is on the IL with a lower back strain, and this is day 9 of his. That's actually day 10 of his IL stint. So he is eligible to come back tomorrow. He played 2 rehab games. He hit a home run in one of those rehab games, which is something he hasn't done at the big league level in a very long time. So I don't know how much people want to read into that one way or another, other than it looks like he's about to return. And just to give another glimpse at those May numbers that he had put up, he was 3 for 25 entering that injury. No power, no plate discipline, kind of mixed reviews on the defense as well. But something that I think was even brought up in our own private chat and that we've been thinking about is in his absence, the way that Brujan has performed and the way that even Otto Lopez has performed. Is he going to go back to being like an everyday shortstop for this team, Isaac? Or is there going to be like just a acknowledgement that he has to prove himself a little bit after such deep struggles in April and May coming into this?
It's a fantastic, very fair question, Eli. I'm if it wasn't asked today, I'm gonna ask Skip tomorrow what he thinks, assuming that Anderson does return. But yeah, with the production they've gotten from specifically Otto Lopez, Brujan has sort of been hot and cold. He's a little bit on a cold spell right now, but he at least shows signs of some life with the bat. I don't love him at shortstop defensively. But like you said with Tim Anderson, it's been mixed reviews at best at shortstop. The offense has been somehow even worse than last year. They did give him $5 million, but I thought that when they did give him the $5 million, it was sort of with a different idea for how the season was going to go. Now that they know which direction the season is going to go, maybe they'll be more willing to maybe cut their losses a little bit with this player and sort of put him into a platoon role. I would just let him hit against lefties. It seems so perfect. Otto Lopez is also a righty, so it's a little bit tough, but to justify the platoon there. But Brujan's a switch, and I would sort of mix and match those 3 guys because I don't think you can just continue letting Tim Anderson play this way. So if I were a betting man, I would say they give him through June. I think they're going to let him play almost every single day through the month of June. And then if things don't change, then you might see either an outright release or a change in his playing time.
Yeah, and for those wondering if there's a chance he gets dealt, I don't think so. You would have to eat up the money and probably attach some sort of prospect in there, but I'll give TA some credit. His defense has actually been statistically league average. He's at a 0 DRS, 0 outs above average. He's held his own at shortstop, but we can't talk much about that when offensively he is just not good. And it's a lot of strikeouts. It's a lot of swinging strikeouts, man. That guy swings at everything that comes his way, and it's definitely been a rough stint here in Miami for TA. But maybe this IL stint, it could have been a Phantom IL. I don't think really it was, but definitely a quicker one than expected. He comes back and hopefully looks something like even 2022 Tim Anderson.
And as TP Joseph mentions here, you're right, Edward. When is Edwards eligible to return from the? I know he's on the 60 day. So when is he eligible?
He's eligible to return on Friday.
Okay.
The 60 days are up. He just started a rehab assignment. He looked good the last 2 days playing second base. But I think this is also relevant to bring up because he is going to play shortstop tomorrow when Jacksonville has its next game. We'll see how that goes. I've been somebody that I've been harsh on Edwards, and just the fact that his defense is a pretty big limitation to this game, that he would have this very clear path and potentially the opportunity for a long career if he's an actual utility player that gives you good defense at several different spots. They tried center field early in 2023, and that did not go well. And they tried shortstop at the end of last year in AAA, and it didn't really go that well either. And it would be a much clearer path for him to return and get a lot of playing time if they believed in him at shortstop. But that arm is just not going to cut it from what I've seen in terms of the arm strength and accuracy, as well as even yesterday at second base, he made one of the most routine errors you'll ever see with like a 10 hopper that just went straight to him, and he fumbled it and he couldn't recover in time to make the throw from second to first with him. And that's, so he is a complicated player where he certainly adds quite a bit of value with his bats ball skills and with his speed and with his general baseball instincts, but the lack of power and the struggles defensively hold him back. So every game is going to be watching very closely of him at AAA, because I think the team wants to give him a shot to prove himself at the big league level. But if they're going to potentially limit TA's playing time or do something even more drastic in terms of giving up on that experiment, then Edwards needs to give them some reason to believe that he can actually fill that important spot, at least on a part-time basis.
And that's the thing too, because with TA, really just depending how he plays these next couple of weeks, you could easily put someone like an Otto Lopez at shortstop, have Xavier Edwards play second, and that would give them both everyday playing time. But again, you have $5 million invested into this guy. He obviously has the background, the resume of a very good baseball player. So you're hoping he gets back to some sort of something, and we'll see what happens. I like Xavier Edwards. He struck out 6.9% of the time last season at AAA. He was the batting champ at AAA. So he definitely has the prospect pedigree to stay up here for a very long time.
Let us hop into our flipped fish of the series. As always, picking a player who previously spent time with the Marlins and their opposing team during their playing career. Almost always a retired player, and that is the case here. So I'm not going to let Isaac answer this one because this is one of the quote tweets to his ever popular flipped fish tweet that he puts up leading into the start of these new series. But for everybody else, I'd say this is going to be relatively hard for anybody else. We'll give you a shot anyway. It is a relief pitcher for both the Marlins and the Brewers, a right-hander, big right-hander, 6'5", parts of 8 seasons in the big leagues, 2009 to 2015. And overall, had some success, well above replacement level, 3.74 ERA, over 500 innings, more of a pitch-to-contact guy. Take a close look, think it over, try to identify who this might be. And on the other side, we'll bring in the rookie, Nate Karsmer, from the press box, and then we'll get a little deeper into the Brewers and, of course, prediction time and all that other good stuff. FOF Live coming at you, sticking with you the rest of the show on the other side of the break.
We have been representing people injured as a result of other people's negligence for over 50 years here in South Florida. If you get injured as a result of somebody else's negligence, it can be a car accident, it can be a slip and fall, medical malpractice, negligent security. If somebody else's negligence caused an injury to either you or one of your loved ones, give us a call. Our phone number is on our page, our website is on our page, and our email addresses are on our page. Please give us a call for a free consultation. We'd love to help you. Let Zach and I protect your rights.
As we bring in Nate here from the press box in time to get his guess in. TP Joseph never knows. Damar has no clue who this might be. Do you have any clue, Nate?
I have no idea. No idea.
Can I say it?
Yeah.
It's the Hopper, Bert Badenhop. His most famous moment, I would have to say, is him pinch hitting in the 10th inning and getting an RBI single, a go-ahead game winner for the Florida Marlins in, I want to say 2010. But yes, like Eli said, pitch to contact, right-handed reliever for the Florida Marlins and the Milwaukee Brewers.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I did not remember that he pitched for the Brewers. It was just one season, it turns out, after his Marlins days. But now we know. How's everything going? Well, relative to what you were expecting, Nate, first time there in this capacity. Tell us about it so far.
Got here around 2:00. Came up here with Crutchett next to me, and went down to the field pretty quickly. Just pretty surreal, you know. I was like the only one out there, and just seeing everyone, just seeing how they, take BP when no one else even is in the stadium. It's really cool. Got some good video of Avi warming up with some volleyball. I thought it was pretty interesting. Saw Jazz put 2 to the Cutwater Spirit sign in right field. He was absolutely mashing today in BP. Fortes and Bethencourt both look good, but overall it's been a very great experience. Hopefully it keeps going that way.
Yeah, I assume I don't know exactly what access they gave you, but at least Crutchik shares with us the injury report from today that we touched on it briefly already with T. Did you see Tim Anderson hanging around?
I did, yeah. He was playing defense. I saw him doing little defensive drills with the rest of the infielders, and I saw him throwing a little bit as well. I didn't see him hit, but he looks pretty good. He was moving around well when I saw him. He was out here around 2:30. He was moving around well and short. He looked good.
So as discussed, we're expecting him to be back on this roster on Tuesday. So for the final 2 games of this series, and then Shagwa Hoeing going out on rehab assignments coming up. Edwards, as we just touched on, he's continuing his rehab assignment and playing some shortstop as well. What are your thoughts about Edwards based on what you saw last year and how he fits into this team? Now that it seems like he could just be a few days away from rejoining this team. How do you think he fits into this whole kind of fluid infield situation?
Yeah, it's tougher now, especially with the emergence of Otto Lopez and how well Brujan's been doing. They kind of all do the same thing, I'd say. Kind of a good hit tool, good speed. But you mentioned Eli. Edwards' defense is kind of lackluster, so that's the only difference between him. But good hitter. You mentioned his prospect pedigree as well. I'd love to see him give him a chance at short or maybe even second. And one more thing, Crutchik did mention to Skip about what happens when TA does come back, what happens to Brujan and Otto Lopez. He said TA is going to slide back to short, and then they can flip-flop at second. So depending on maybe who's pitching that day, might not really a platoon situation, but Lopez and Brujan will be moving to second.
For this series as well, probably the most recognizable guy on the first place Brewers would have to be Christian Yelich. This is now year 7 of him as a Marlins opponent after being traded. He seems like he's about as good as well, maybe not MVP form, but fresh off the IL just a few days ago. What do you still think of him as? How much do you think he still has left in the tank at this stage of his career? 32 years old and having kind of been off and on ever since those MVP years.
Yeah, I think he can still definitely be a star in this league as long as he stays healthy. I mean, the hit tool's always been there. You can stick in not really center anymore, but any position in the outfield, you can put him in, and he looks good. He had a great PP today. He also put a couple balls in the upper deck. He looked great. I mean, he's definitely comfortable hitting here. And, I think the issue for him has just been healthy. I mean, he sees a lot of red on his profile, so that's always a sign. But, it's him and William Contreras have been the 2 best players for the Brewers this year. So it's very encouraging for Yelich. Played for for so long. You like to see a guy like him be healthy and keep doing big things.
Yeah, his IL stint, unfortunately, is just the only thing with him has always been his back. Ever since his Marlins days in 2014, I think it was the case, except when he shattered his kneecap against the Marlins, if I remember that correctly. I'm not sure, but Yeah, he's got to be. What about the pitching matchup today, Mr. Nate? What are you looking forward to the most? With, I believe, Ryan Weathers on the bump for Miami.
Yeah, Skip also got asked about Ryan Weathers. The main thing for him that Skip mentioned is just attacking hitters with his fastball, because he did mention that fastball is his best pitch. But attacking hitters with his fastball and relying on his off speed as well. He had it in his start against the Dodgers and also his start against Detroit. He's mixing his off speed pitches really well and really evenly too. I think in the Los Angeles game he threw it like 20%, 19%, 19%. He mixed them all in really nicely. So going to keep this Brewers lineup off balance, and especially I mentioned at Crutchick, the bottom half of the Brewers lineup isn't really that strong. At least recently they haven't been. So if he can keep hitters off balance and really get his fastball to the point where hitters can't sit on it, I think he's going to be looking really good. And then I believe it's Joe Ross tonight, former National. Marlins fans definitely recognize him. I'd say his best days are behind him, but if they hit like how they did for the majority of the Mets series, I think that he gets runs on the board pretty early against them.
Yeah, like you mentioned, that bottom of the order, it seems pretty vulnerable. Gary Sanchez hitting fifth. Jackson Chourio, the very highly touted prospect, has not had the season I think Brewers fans would have liked. I thought it was very interesting that they gave him that amount of money before he ever stepped foot on a big league field, but that's just me. And then bottom three.
Yeah, I think the bottom three, they're all under the Mendoza line. So
yeah,
even a guy like Willie Adames has been struggling this year. Who's the guy that was a former future Marlin, as people like to say. He was been mocked to the Marlins for years in those mock trades, but it's only, like I said, it's pretty much just been Contreras and Yelich this year. So whether he get past those two, and hopefully he can start cruising.
0 combined home runs for those three players: Monasterio, Miller, and Weimer. 0. 0 home runs. So it looks like the Marlins have the advantage offensively, and we don't say that very often.
Exactly.
They have it tonight. They have it tonight for sure with Joe Ross on the mound. So
yeah,
we'll see.
Well, Nate, for people that are not aware, he's near the top of our prediction time leaderboard. So even though he's on site, he sure needs to get his prediction in. Let me make sure that I give you the right background for it. Go ahead. Yeah. So, no pressure, but tell us what you got, Nate. The number of games the Marlins will win and who your series MVP is.
All right. I picked the Marlins to win the past two series. They've came through both times, so I'll ride the hot hand, I guess. I'll take the Marlins to win 2 out of 3. And series MVP, you look good today. I already mentioned it. I'll take Jazz series MVP.
We have to ask you, how's the ice cream? Have you tried it?
I have not. I got the buffet. I have not had the ice cream yet. Probably around game time we'll get it, but I'm looking forward to it. That's for sure.
We need the review.
I got you. Don't worry.
So Nate is on site. Alex Crutchick on site as well for us, covering this series opener. Be sure to follow them. I'm going to put Nate on the big screen again. He needs to get more followers before the end of the season for sure. So check him out. And looking forward to following along. Nate, I hope you have a good time. Hope you get a compelling game to cover over there. Thanks a lot.
Yep, of course. Take care.
I hope Daniel Alvarez stops talking at some point during the day.
Man.
that voice coming in the background was Daniel Alvarez Montes of El Extrabase. Tremendous journalist. And I imagine if he had to pick his series MVP, it would either be Jackson Chourio or William Contreras.
Freddie Peralta, right? He's Venezuelan?
Freddie Peralta.
Is he?
I think he's Venezuelan too.
Is he?
Yeah, I think so. Let me check.
I think no, he's Dominican.
Yeah.
Dominican pitcher.
Yeah. Oh wow.
Yeah, we would know if Freddie Peralta was Venezuelan. I think Daniel was more Freddie Peralta love on decks if he was.
Yeah, so they're just. I've gotten this comment. He's referring to Rhys Hoskins here. We've got several people that try to pick Rhys Hoskins for series MVP, not realizing that he's actually on the IL right now. He is on their team, and that does make their offense quite a bit different. As we could zoom in on the Brewers one more time, that's kind of one. This does not look like a first place lineup because of how thin it is, and one reason why it's a little thinner is because of Hoskins being out. He's somebody that really early in his career, he destroyed the Marlins. He owned the Marlins his first couple of years in the league, and then it was kind of hit or miss a few years after that. But coming off of his torn ACL last year, now it's not knee related, it's a more minor injury. I think he hurt his groin or something like that, but he will not be available for the series. So that is somewhat of a lucky break for the Marlins right here. And Isaac brought up Jackson Churio and the fact that he got $82 million guaranteed before playing his first big league game. And so far, it's just been really meh with him, just well below average across the board. Not overmatched, but just somebody that is closer to a replacement level than he is to being a star or even a good everyday starter. But yet he continues to play almost every day. We have Willie Adames here as well. Remember, there was that brief moment in the offseason where it looked like maybe the Brewers would deal him with 1 year left of control, that if the Marlins were serious about trying to repeat as a postseason team, he could be kind of a landing spot right there. In hindsight, Kevin, what do you think about the way that played out, where the Brewers hold on to him, the Marlins don't trade away any of their prospect capital, they end up struggling as well, but at the same time, if they had gotten him, it's not like he would have made the difference between them being in last place and being a contender, right?
No, you would have felt a little bit better about your situation at shortstop at least, and probably wouldn't have had Tim Anderson there. But it's definitely an interesting situation with Willie Adames because they make that trade with Corbin. They trade Corbin Burns, and you have Joey Ortiz who comes in the trade, who would have been a very nice option at shortstop, and that's a very good defensive player to have there. At least you could have traded Willie Adames as well, but I mean, at this point, it really, we'll see what happens there. That would have been a nice fit for the Marlins, given Adames was a part of the Rays. He was with Bendix. I mean, they know each other well. Bendix already made a couple of deals with the Rays in the offseason, so he brought in a couple of his former guys. You know, Birch Smith was with the Rays, Betancourt, Fauché, Brujan. So you would have brought Adames, and that's a guy who I think would have made a lot of sense. And for the past couple of years, that's definitely a name we've mentioned. Obviously, wouldn't put you over 500 or anything, but I do think that the current situation of this team, where they're 15-33, you would hope that you would have a couple more wins and less losses with Adames there. And he's a really good player overall, great player. Even when he was struggling, he was putting up some nice, some underlying numbers that really were encouraging. So we'll see. Maybe Miami makes a move in free agency and snags Mr. Adames.
Come on, Kevin. He's going to, especially, he has had a much improved year from last year, which unfortunately I think is going to put him well out of their price range. Oh,
Probably.
actually, I didn't realize he has come back down to earth quite a bit. He was really hot for a few weeks in April and for much of May. And then if I zoom into this just a little bit, it's kind of just been a recent slump with him. The last 9-10 days, he is 4 for 33 with like a 300 OPS. He's been in a bad slump over the last week and a half, which has brought his numbers back down to being kind of meh instead of what they looked like earlier in the year. So, yeah.
He'll get 9 figures.
Yeah, I think if he keeps up the pace he's at right now, he still clears that. If he actually does have the bounce back year I thought he was having, if he gets up closer to like an 800 OPS type of guy, then then he'll be very healthy to the 9 figures. Like I was thinking that if he had a good year, he might be in line for Dansby Swanson type of money. But this that might be a bit of a reach.
Yeah.
I think it is.
Yeah. So we can slide over to the Marlins side right here. Jazz leading off as he had almost every single day right here. I continue to be impressed that he has played all but one game for the Marlins this year, 48 out of 49 if we include tonight. Otherwise, it looks pretty familiar to what it has looked like since TA went on the IL, where Otto Lopez and Vidal Brujan play pretty heavily. Jake Berger had another really quiet series. I don't think there's any more to say than we've already said about him, where he's just struggling a lot. I know, Isaac, you were somebody that were kind of low on Berger entering the year. Is his underperformance, is this kind of what you feared might happen for him coming back down to earth from where he was in 2023?
Yeah, I mean, obviously baseball's a very fickle game, and it's extremely hard to be consistent at it. And when he came and he was just hitting everything hard and on a line, and he was clearing the wall, I don't know. I just didn't love the approach. I feel like a lot of those well-struck balls were early in the count. When he gets to 2 strikes, I think he sort of sells out a little bit. I'm still extremely confident that he's, one of these cornerstones for this team. He's under club control for a long time, but since he's returned from the IL, he is hitting he has not drawn a walk He's hitting 104 with a 229 OPS in those 12 games. He is striking out. He has at least one strikeout. Yeah, in every single game but one, and he has multiple strikeouts in like 5 of those 12 games. So he's struck out 13 times overall in those 11 games started. It's been a really rough go for him. He looks almost lost, but I don't think he's this bad. I think he's going to be a lot better, obviously, sort of close to what he was in April when he was just driving in all these runs. But, he spent a lot of time on the IL. Got to give him a little bit of a break. But, yeah, it's been very bad. You think this is the lowest he's hit as a Marlin? I know he's hit fifth last series as well, but they usually like him third or fourth.
In terms of both Brujan and Lopez, yeah, and Brujan continues to kind of stay afloat. I think his hottest streak might already be behind him. I'm still skeptical. There's just not much power there at all, which kind of limits his full potential as a hitter. Where I'd have to admit that they really have, between those two, they have done a fairly good job of imitating a rise in the production that he's had overall in the near term. I'm still not confident of them keeping that up quite the same way. With Lopez, this is something I've mentioned a few times, that he is extremely aggressive on the first pitch of plate appearances. And so far that's working out really well. I just fear that as the league gets to notice that and how he likes to ambush that first pitch, that he's going to be attacked a lot differently, not being given appetizing first pitches, and perhaps put in a situation where he has to really battle deeper into his counts and won't be able to get off as many of his A swings the way that he has so far. So I'm still nervous that Lopez could be, once the league adjusts to him, that those numbers could come down quite a bit, make him closer to who he actually is. But what he has done, which is important, is he's stabilized his spot on the active roster for the near-term future, where with TA coming back, I think there's this consensus that Tristan Gray is going to be the one that slides off the roster, because Lopez is the one that he's been getting that steady playing time, and almost every single game he putting a good swing on the ball. And his defense, it's been a little mixed. There were a couple egregious errors so far, but also some smooth plays as well, especially when he's at second base. It seems to be his most comfortable spot, and that's where he is tonight. And so Nick Fortes, that's somebody that I'll continue to watch closely, because I have just been perplexed about how much he struggled last year and for the very early portion of this year. Hopefully that one huge game he had on Friday is some sort of turning point for him offensively, where, as you see here, he has the lowest strikeout rate on the team. His 12% strikeout rate. It's hard to struggle so much offensively when you make contact as often as he does. It's just been a lot of soft contact, a lot of ground balls and pop-ups, which is a bad combination with him. But he has an opportunity here to this season is his opportunity to really claim be their primary catcher and take advantage of that. And for that first month and a half, he really squandered that opportunity, but yet still some time to salvage things here.
Yeah, a little bit surprised. Not to say it's surprised he's playing, because I would assume he was going to be locked into that last game of this series, but this is a Milwaukee team that steals a lot. They're third in the league, and they have the third most steals in the league. And Bethancourt was brought in to limit base runners. And I know he hasn't done too much of that this season, but definitely more than what Nick Fortes has done throughout his career. So definitely think Bethancourt would have been the ideal guy to have start, but kind of looked at it right after the lineup went up, and you kind of noticed that Nick Fortes has really just caught everyone more than Bethancourt. But yeah, I mean, it's also Bettencourt's been the better bat as of late, so there were multiple ways you could kind of go about it to say that Bettencourt should be starting a little bit more, give him ride the hot hand, I guess, in this case, and that's been Bettencourt. But maybe he does start tomorrow with Trevor on the mound.
Yeah, with Nick Gordon, we touched on it earlier, he's been better, but he's had this really weird habit. If you look at his game logs, it's really just a handful of awesome games that kind of carry up his whole line, where in a series he'll have 2 offers and then have 1 where he goes off. There's still some like interesting inconsistencies there that probably hold him back from being anything close to an everyday player. So leave him stuck in this platoon role that he's in right now. Other than that, well, we didn't get a chance to talk much about Anthony Maldonado getting sent down. Uh, I think we should.
No way.
It's not nearly as polarizing a move as when Max Meyer was performing well and he got sent down early on in the season. But that was a move they made just yesterday, kind of swapping spots between him and Emmanuel Ramirez right now. So we expect that there will be, again, a change not too long from now when either Hoeing gets back or JT Chagua gets back. Just your thoughts on that, Isaac, that Maldonado, who had that instant success out of his bullpen, who we have pretty highly ranked as like the best reliever prospect in this organization, and yet he gets squeezed off for at least a couple of weeks just so that they could get a fresh arm in there.
I hope
Yeah,
Carver's watching.
I don't know why. I mean, I get it. He probably wouldn't have been my choice to send down, but it's just not that big of a deal. You follow this team, you know that they just need to get fresh arms, and he's the easiest guy to send down. I think with Anthony Bender, they're trying to accrue a little bit of trade value with him for when it gets to July, and they're not going to send the guy down right now. And arguably, he has probably the second best stuff in that bullpen. Maldonado, you have him forever. He was okay in his big league time. He had really just 2 bad outings. If I remember correctly, I know the Detroit outing was bad, and then I think Philly before that. And he came back and had 2 shutout outings after that, especially those 2 big innings in his last outing before getting sent down against the Mets. Yes, in that big cover behind win, and that pretty much allowed the Marlins to come back and win that ball game. But like you said, Eli, he'll be back. It's really not that big of a deal that some people are making it out to be. He'll be back in 13 days. Like I said, you're not going to send down Anthony Bender. You're not going to send down Andrew Nardi. Who else are you going to send down? So it's fine. If this was a different situation, competitiveness wise, then maybe you do something like with Sixto or with Birch Smith or someone else, but that's not the case here.
Yeah, and this is kind of like what we saw Cronin at the start of the season, really. I mean, he's back and he hasn't gone down since. So it should be similar, it should be a similar situation. Obviously, a little different when you have someone like a Hoeing and then Chagua coming back. So there's going to be a lot of moves in the coming weeks, and should be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah. And I almost forgot to touch on what we want to do on a lot of these shows, especially when they face the Marlins, a contending team, is just hypothetical trade fits between these rosters. Because I think the Brewers are one that they're overachieving a little bit early on. They entered this year, I think, as a expected team to take a little step back from where they have been, especially moving on from Corbin Burns. And yet, all things considered, they're in first place in the Central Division right now. They overall, they've just been a pretty consistent team early on this year, where they're in a situation, it seems like they're trending towards being a buyer as this year goes on. And I can't help look at their rotation depth chart, and the drop off from Willie Peralta, who's a stud, he's a great guy, but the drop off from him to like everybody else in the rotation is pretty drastic. I'll just show it to people right here where they're at the moment. We'll see up close. We'll get a good look at Robert Gasser, who's off to a strong start in his career so far. But they've already lost Wade Miley to surgery. Obviously, Brandon Woodruff is out for the whole year.
Bryce Wilson's pitching.
Yeah, Bryce Wilson. They are relying quite a bit on Bryce Wilson, of all people right now, who used to be a pretty highly regarded prospect and has had some success as a reliever. But the fact that he is, you could argue, their number 2 starter right now, I mean, they could be a team that they have a lot of young position players, most of whom are kind of in limbo between establishing themselves as regulars and others that are, they just have a lot of depth at that, especially in the outfield, that with which to deal from right here. That like I could see a scenario, maybe if Edward Cabrera comes back in a few weeks and he looks pretty healthy, that could be a guy that interests them. I mean, Luzardo is the one that we're going to bring up constantly because he's the one that is obviously going to be available and gives the Marlins such a good chance to bring back a huge return. I don't know if the Brewers would go quite that bold or if they necessarily have a worthy centerpiece that they're willing to move for him. But this is just something that was on my mind, that I think they're a team that as long as they stay afloat well above 500, that they could be shopping for rotation help. And the Marlins, even with the injuries that they've had, are a team that is going to have several different tiers of starters that they could potentially flip to them.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the names that would stand out in their prospect hall would be Jefferson Caro, AAA guy, 21 years old. I mean, you trade for him, you're basically bringing in your catcher of the future right there, filling in a big building block. Aside from that, their farm system is just really not the greatest.
Yeah, that's why immediately I sort of ignored that aspect with Luzardo. I don't think the Brewers have anything Miami would want, and Miami might have PTSD with dealing with Brewers with such a hefty trade asset like Luzardo. I think Cabrera might make sense. At like beautiful Alex Carr said. I think Bryson Garrett makes a little bit of sense, but Luzardo, I smell Baltimore for Luzardo. If they decide to trade him, who knows? Miami might shock us all and extend the young left-hander.
Yeah. And elsewhere in here, assuming that Rhys Hoskins does come back from his injury relatively soon, I think they're relatively well set at first base and DH. But for whatever reason, he has a weird setback. Then Josh Bell is another guy that we'll know will be available for sure. And kind of in that same vein with the Brewers, they have not had Devin Williams this entire year yet due to an injury that he suffered in spring, but he is expected back well before the middle of the season. So as long as he reestablishes himself, I don't think they're going to be a Tanner Scott team or one that pushes all that hard for him, even though you can never have enough relievers. The Brewers are one of those teams that kind of has magic touch in terms of turning regular relievers into superheroes out of nowhere. So yeah, I think we'd look at the rotation and we'll see what other stuff pops up as it goes along. But this is a team that is trending towards being a buyer. So we will see how that goes. We can now pop into prediction time as we get within 20 minutes of first pitch, within 10 minutes of the show ending. Where's my cute little video that I put together? Here it is.
This is prediction time.
I don't want to like toot my own horn here, but I'm really good at this.
Oh my god, dude! Seriously?
Yeah.
That was pretty funny.
Yeah,
Capital.
it doesn't really apply much with this panel because the three of us are actually not super high on the prediction side. Yeah, Daniel is the one I will show you in just a moment. Daniel Rodriguez, our most frequent host. He's still setting the pace just 1 point ahead of the rest of everybody. Our super subs right behind his tails. And Nate, as I mentioned before, Nate is now tied for third in the prediction time standings. And he already gave his thoughts earlier in the show about that. Usual reminder for people that if you are a super sub of ours, fishonfirst.com/subscriptions to sign up for as little as $4 a month. You can compete along with us. And as deep as we are in this season, the performance has not been great. I should have brought up the last series where Jesus Luzardo was awesome. Otto Lopez was the hero. Josh Bell was probably as valuable as anybody else by saving that second game of the series. And yet not a single one of us predicted any of those guys to win MVP. So by default, it ended up going to Sean Manaea. Isaac really lucked out because just a really ordinary 5-inning start from Sean Manaea turned out to be as valuable as anybody else that we predicted here. That's why we encourage people to participate, especially the MVP portion of it. It is very much a crapshoot that we determine by win probability added right here. Thank you to LMF, who makes his predictions as well. He is already, I should flash up what people are predicting so far. First super subs that I saw send in their picks earlier today. They still have until first pitch to get those in to me on the site or in our special Discord channel. That's one of the other super sub perks, is our channel within the Marlins Discord server right there. But I have our video from Daniel Rodriguez out traveling. He'll show you where he is.
Why are you okay?
All right, I'm here in Kentucky for my prediction video. I have the Brewers taking 2 out of 3. I think they're a superior team, and I'm going to go with William Contreras as the MVP. Has been on fire to start the season. 2 home runs this series. Back to you, Eli.
It's not a baseball assignment, but he is on assignment for another job. So he just wants to show that he's still thinking of us and that he still wants to protect his lead. So there you
okay.
There he goes.
When I go to Columbia for my cousin's bar mitzvah, I'll make sure to send a video from there.
I don't know. Well, as long as there's not too much background noise, I'll take it. That's kind of the main tiebreaker right here. Yeah. So without further ado, let me get the music up, our background up. Let's go with Isaac to lead this one off. You know how this works.
Alrighty. I actually sort of like the Marlins matchup here a little bit. I might lose here. But I think the Marlins will win 2 out of 3. And I think Jesus Luzardo continues his dominance to be one of the best trade assets Miami has in a long time.
Kevin Barral, your prediction, sir.
I'm going to go with the Marlins taking 2 out of 3 as well, and I'm going to go with the hot-hitting Josh Bell as the MVP of this series.
I pride myself in being unique with some of these picks, but I got to ride with exactly what Isaac said. Marlins taking 2 out of 3. With Jesus Luzardo, I think he has fully recaptured what he had last year, and that he's going to keep it going. This is a Brewers lineup that is certainly not as deep as it sometimes is, and I could see him going 3 times through and dominating every step in the way in a Marlins win. So he pitches the final game of this series, and I think he's going to outduel Willie Peralta in that rubber match to give the Marlins the series win. 3 straight series wins for the Marlins. It sounds a little too good to be true. It probably is, but that's my prediction. Here on Fish on First Live. Thanks everybody for joining us on this show. We are going to be back, of course, for the next series, but I think we're actually going to film that one on the off day leading into the D-back series on Thursday night. So I hope everybody joins us for that. They're able to make it. And yeah, we'll wrap it up right here. So first of 3 games between the Brewers and Marlins about to get underway. Eli Sussman, Kevin Barral, Isaac Azoot here on our show. Check out our coverage. Everything is on fishonfirst.com, and we appreciate all the support that you've been giving us. Let's get out of here. Go fish.
Yeah.